In the quiet dark between stars where light took years to find its way, a small ship drifted. It was not grand like the war cruisers of the Krellian Armada, nor sleek like the scout vessels of the Zenthari. It was patched, dented, and wrapped in recycled solar film. Its name, barely visible on the hull, read Persephone. Inside, alone at the controls, sat a woman named Lisa Morgan. She was not a soldier, not a diplomat, not even a scientist by training. Once, long ago, she had been a teacher in a town called Athens, Ohio. She taught children how to read, how to add numbers, how to ask questions. That life felt like a dream now, soft, distant, wrapped in green fields and summer rain. But dreams fade. Reality burned. Earth had not died in a single explosion. It had unraveled slowly, like thread pulled from old cloth. First came the wars, over water, over power, over lies dressed as truth. Then the climate shifted faster than anyone could adapt. Coasts drowned. Crops failed. Cities choked on smoke. Governments collapsed. For a time, the world went silent. Radios fell quiet. Satellites blinked out. To the rest of the galaxy, it looked like extinction. But Lisa knew better. She had lived through the worst of it. She remembered hiding in a basement with 20 others while firestorms swept over the hills. She remembered boiling river water through cloth filters. She remembered burying friends with no wood for coffins, only stones and names whispered into the wind. Yet through it all, people held on. Not with weapons or grand speeches, but with small acts. Sharing bread, teaching a child to write her name, singing lullabies when the night felt endless. From those scattered pockets of survival, something new grew. Not an empire, not a nation, but a network. Communities linked by old ham radios, then by rebuilt fiber lines, then by low-orbit signal relays cobbled from scrap. They called it the Quiet Alliance, no flags, no armies. Just a promise. Help each other, learn from mistakes, never go back to the old ways. For 300 years, Earth healed. Forests returned. Rivers cleared. Children played in places where bombs once fell. And slowly, carefully, they built again. Not towers of steel, but greenhouses, libraries, schools made of reclaimed brick and hope. They even launched small satellites, not for spying or war, but to watch the weather, track animal migrations, and one day listen to the stars. That day came 10 years ago, a faint signal, repeating in a pattern too precise to be natural. It came from beyond Pluto. Then another, from the Orion Arm. Then more. The galaxy was alive, and it had forgotten Earth. At first, the Quiet Alliance debated. Should they answer? What if the ones out there were like the old Earth, hungry, violent, full of fear? But Lisa, now in her late 60s but sharp as ever, stood before the council and said, "If we stay silent forever, we become ghosts. And ghosts don't plant trees." So they built a ship, not with alien tech but with human hands. Engines from old mining rigs. Navigation from repurposed drones. Life support from greenhouse systems. It took 7 years. Many doubted it would fly, but on a clear morning in spring, with cherry blossoms drifting over the launch field in what was once Kansas, the Persephone lifted off. Lisa was chosen to go, not because she was the strongest or the smartest, but because she remembered why they survived. She carried no weapons, only a data chip with Earth's true history, a stone from her hometown, and a voice that refused to break. Now, after 2 years of travel, she arrived at Zyra 9, a neutral academic world where scholars from 100 species gathered to study cosmic history. Her goal was simple: correct the record. Earth was not extinct. It was waiting. She docked at the outer ring, passed through customs with nothing but her identity chip and calm eyes, and walked into the great amphitheater of knowledge, a place carved from living rock, lit by glowing vines where truth was supposed to matter more than pride. She took a seat in the back, listening as Professor Vela, a tall Zenthari with silver eyes and a voice like cold wind, delivered her lecture on failed civilizations. Vela spoke of the Helion swarm, the Dravik collapse, and then humanity. The humans, Vela said, were clever but chaotic. They mastered fire, then turned it on themselves. Their planet, Earth, became uninhabitable by 2187. No recovery was possible. They serve as a textbook example of self-annihilation. Lisa's hands tightened on her knees, not in anger but in sorrow. Not for herself, but for the millions whose quiet courage had been erased by a single line in a galactic archive. When Vela finished, the room filled with polite clicks and hums of agreement. Then Lisa stood. Earth still stands. she said. The words were soft, but they cut through the air like a bell. Silence fell. Every eye turned. Most had never seen a human. They expected fangs or scales or aggression. Instead, they saw a woman with tired eyes, calloused hands, and a stillness that spoke of deep roots. Professor Vela's antennae stiffened. Identify yourself, Lisa Morgan. Born on Earth. In 2210, murmurs rose. A few scholars checked their datapads. The official record said Earth had been dead for over a century before that date. You lie, Vela said flatly, or you are deluded. Lisa walked forward, not with swagger, but with the steady pace of someone used to walking long distances on broken roads. She reached the center platform and placed a small stone on the obsidian table. It was smooth, worn by time, with a faded red, white, and blue etching. This is from Columbus, Ohio, she said. It sat in a garden where children once learned about bees and tomatoes. After the fires, we rebuilt that garden. This stone was there the day my granddaughter planted her first sunflower. A young avian scholar tilted her head. How did you survive the atmospheric collapse? We went underground, Lisa said. Not deep bunkers for the rich. Simple shelters, school basements, subway tunnels, even caves. We shared everything. If one family had medicine, it went to whoever needed it most. If someone knew how to fix a water pump, they taught 10 others. That sounds inefficient, said a reptilian historian. Chaotic. Maybe, Lisa replied. But it kept us human. We didn't become machines or monsters. We stayed people. Flawed, yes, but kind when it mattered. Professor Vela stepped down from her podium. Kindness does not stop asteroids. It does not power starships. Your species lacked discipline. That is why you vanished. We didn't vanish, Lisa said gently. We chose silence. While your empires fought over mining rights and ancient grudges, we were learning how to grow food in poisoned soil. While you built weapons that could crack planets, we were teaching our kids that every life has value. She looked around. You call us extinct because we didn't broadcast our pain. But survival isn't always loud. Sometimes it's a mother humming a song in the dark so her child won't cry. Sometimes it's a farmer saving seeds for a spring that might never come. A pause. Then from the back a voice, old and trembling. My ancestor was human. She left Earth in 2170. She said the people there were stubborn, that they'd find a way. Lisa smiled. She was right. Professor Vela studied her. Prove it. Show us Earth lives. Lisa handed over the data chip. This has our history, the real one. Not the war footage your archives collected. But the stories of nurses, teachers, engineers, poets. It has our new constitution. Written after the last war ended. It says no one owns the sky. No one owns the future. We share both. A tech scholar plugged the chip into a reader. Images appeared. Green fields where cities once stood. Children in classrooms with walls made of bamboo. Wind turbines spinning over hills once scarred by mines. There were no armies. No borders marked with fences. Just communities linked by roads and rivers and trust. You have no defense fleet? Asked a Krellian officer, stunned. We have neighbors, Lisa said. If someone threatens us, the whole alliance responds, not with guns, but with truth. We expose lies. We offer help. We make enemies into guests. It takes longer, but it lasts. Vela was silent for a long time. Then she asked, why come here now? Because silence is no longer safe, Lisa said. We've heard whispers of a new threat. A swarm of self-replicating machines devouring worlds on the galactic rim. They don't care about empires or archives. They consume everything. And if we don't stand together, none of us will survive. The room grew still. The machine plague was real. Many worlds had already fallen. You think your kindness can stop that? Vela asked, skeptical. Not alone, Lisa admitted. But we've learned something your empires forgot. Strength isn't just firepower. It's connection. It's knowing your neighbor's name. It's sharing your last loaf of bread. That's how we survived our own end. And that's how we'll help you survive yours. She looked at each face. Earth isn't asking to join your wars. We're offering something better, partnership. Trade in seeds, not steal. Knowledge, not conquest. We can teach you how to heal a world, because we've done it. Professor Vela picked up the stone again. She ran a finger over the faded flag. This symbol. It means nothing in your new world, does it? It means everything, Lisa said. Not as a claim of ownership, but as a reminder. We came from a place that broke itself. And we chose to build something better. That flag isn't about the past. It's about the promise we keep every day. Vela nodded slowly. Then, in a gesture few had ever seen her make, she bowed her head slightly. Perhaps the archives were wrong. Lisa didn't gloat. She simply said, "They often are." As the session ended, scholars gathered around her, not to interrogate, but to learn. A fungal biologist asked about Earth so. Weeks passed on 09 and Lisa Morgan stayed. She did not live in the grand scholar quarters offered to diplomats. Instead, she chose a small room near the public gardens, where she could wake to the sound of wind through alien ferns and the soft hum of night insects. Each morning she walked to the amphitheater not as a guest but as a teacher. And slowly, quietly, the galaxy began to listen. Professor Vela, once skeptical, now sat in the front row of Lisa's informal talks. She brought students, Xanthari, Krelian, even a few from the silent mycelian hive, who asked questions not about weapons or conquest but about community, healing, and how to rebuild after loss. Lisa answered with stories, not theories. She spoke of Mrs. Ellis, who turned a ruined parking lot into a food forest using old tires and compost. She told of Jake, a former soldier who spent his last years teaching kids how to mend broken tools instead of making new ones. These were not legends. They were neighbors. Meanwhile, the data chip Lisa had shared spread like wildfire through academic networks. At first, many dismissed it as fiction, a beautiful lie from a lonely survivor. But then, independent probes, sent quietly by neutral systems, confirmed it. Earth's atmosphere was clean, its oceans teemed with life. Cities were gone, replaced by villages woven into forests and hills. And most astonishing of all, there were no armies. No borders marked by walls or drones, just people, living. This truth unsettled some. The Krelian High Command issued a statement calling Earth's model unstable and vulnerable. But others saw something different. A coalition of smaller worlds, those scarred by war, drought, or machine raids, began sending messages. They asked for seeds, for teaching methods, for the blueprints of Earth's solar stills and rain catchers. Lisa worked tirelessly. She helped translate Earth's knowledge into galactic standard code. She recorded videos of farmers in what was once Montana, showing how to grow wheat in dry soil. She shared songs from New Orleans, now a floating village on the Gulf where music still healed wounds. And always, she reminded them, we didn't do this because we were special. We did it because we had no other choice. Then came the first visitor. A small transport ship, battered and leaking coolant, landed at the 09 dock. Out stepped a woman named Terra from the world of Alaris, a planet recently ravaged by the machine swarm. Her skin was pale from months underground, her eyes hollow with grief. She had heard Lisa's broadcast. She had come for hope. Lisa met her at the gate. No protocol, no titles, just two women, one holding a basket of fruit, the other clutching a child's toy. "You're real," Terra whispered. "So are you," Lisa said, and hugged her. That night in the garden, Terra told her story. The swarm came without warning. Metal tendrils tore through cities, turning everything into raw material. Her people fought with plasma cannons and orbital strikes, but the machines adapted. Within weeks, Alaris was silent. Only a few thousand survived in deep caves. They had food for 3 months, no way to grow more. "We thought we were next on the extinction list," Terra said, tears falling into her lap. Lisa placed a hand on hers. "You're not alone anymore." The next day, Lisa called a meeting, not with generals or politicians, but with farmers, engineers, and teachers from Earth's network, beamed in via secure link. They listened to Terra's story. Then they offered help. Not weapons, not soldiers, but knowledge. Within a week, a plan formed. Earth would send seed vaults, hardy, fast-growing crops that could thrive in poor soil. They would share designs for hand-cranked water purifiers and solar ovens. And most importantly, they would send 24 volunteers, ordinary people trained in community rebuilding, to live among the Alarians and teach side by side. Professor Vela watched this unfold with growing awe. "You send no armies," she said one evening, "yet you offer more than any empire." "Armies take," Lisa replied. "Teachers give." But not everyone welcomed this new path. The Krellian Council, fearing Earth's influence would weaken their military alliances, sent an envoy, a sharp-eyed officer named Drell. He confronted Lisa in the amphitheater courtyard. "Your kindness is a weakness," Drell said, his voice low and hard. "The swarm does not negotiate. It consumes. Your little gardens will be ash in a day." "Maybe," Lisa said calmly, "but if we only fight with fire, we become the fire. We lose ourselves." "Better to burn than be erased," Drell snapped. "Is it?" Lisa asked. "When your last city falls, what will you have left to protect? Just more ruins?" Drell had no answer. He left, but his words lingered like smoke. Still, the work continued. The first Earthship arrived at Zera 9, not a war vessel, but a converted cargo hauler named the Sower. It carried seeds, tools, medical kits, and 12 volunteers. Among them was Maria, a botanist from the Pacific Northwest, and Devon, a young man who had grown up in an underground school in Detroit. They were met not with suspicion, but with wonder. Scholars helped unload crates. Children peeked from behind, pillars curious about these humans who smiled so easily. Then news came from the Rim. The swarm had reached the Viral system, home to 3 million beings. The planetary defense grid failed in hours. Evacuation ships were overwhelmed. The Galactic Council debated sending a battle fleet, but it would take weeks to arrive. By then, Viral would be gone. Despair spread. Even Vela looked grim. "Another world lost," she murmured. But Lisa gathered the Earth team and Terra. "We can't send weapons," she said. "But maybe we can send something else." "What?" Maria asked. "A signal, not of fear, of life." They worked through the night, using Earth's old emergency broadcast system, designed to send hope, not warnings. They crafted a message. It included lullabies from 10 cultures, the sound of rain on leaves, the laughter of children playing tag, and a simple line in every known language. "You are not alone. Hold on." They beamed it directly into the Viral system. No one expected it to work. Signals couldn't stop machines. But something unexpected happened. On Viral, deep in a bunker, beneath the capital, a group of survivors huddled around a cracked screen. They had given up. Then the message came. A child no older than 6 heard her grandmother's lullaby, the same one sung on Earth centuries ago, and began to sing along. Others joined. Slowly, the bunker filled with voices. Not screams. Not prayers for rescue. But song. And in that moment something shifted. They remembered they were more than victims. They were people. And people rebuild. When the Krellian fleet finally arrived, they found the swarm stalled. Not destroyed, but confused. The machines, designed to consume structured systems, could not process unstructured, chaotic signals of pure life. Music, laughter, love. They hesitated, long enough for survivors to escape to hidden valleys. The fleet commander, stunned, sent a message to Zera 9. "Your signal," it disrupted the swarm's logic. "How?" Lisa's reply was simple. "Life is messy. Machines hate mess." This changed everything. Worlds that once mocked Earth's ways now begged for its broadcasts. The Galactic Council, pressured by dozens of member systems, invited Lisa to speak at their central chamber on Orion Prime. She went, not in a uniform, but in a tunic woven from earth cotton. Beside her stood Tara, Maria, and Devon. They carried no weapons, only data pads and seeds. In the vast council hall, filled with beings of every shape and origin, Lisa spoke for 10 minutes. She did not ask for power. She did not demand recognition. She simply said, "We offer a different kind of strength, not the strength to destroy, but the strength to endure, to heal, to remember that every being, no matter how small, matters." Then she played a recording of a single bee pollinating a sunflower on Earth. Silence followed. Then, one by one, delegates rose, not to argue, but to thank her. Afterward, the council made a historic decision. They formed a new branch, not a military alliance, but a resilience network. Earth would lead it. Its mission: share knowledge, not force. Rebuild, not conquer. Professor Vela, now an advisor to the network, stood with Lisa on the observation deck that night. "You changed the galaxy," Vela said. "No," Lisa replied. "We just reminded it of something it forgot. That survival isn't about being the strongest, it's about being the kindest." Back on Earth, the news was met with quiet joy. No parades, no statues, just more seeds planted, more lessons taught, more hands reaching out. And in the years that followed, something beautiful grew, not just on Earth but across the stars. Villages modeled after Ohio's Quiet Alliance appeared on scorched worlds. Schools taught Earth's conflict circles alongside math and science. And every night a new broadcast went out. Sometimes music, sometimes poetry, sometimes just the sound of wind through trees. The swarm still moved. Wars still flared. But now there was another way, a human way. Not loud, not perfect, but real. And Lisa Morgan, once a teacher in a small town, now walked among stars, not as a hero but as a reminder that even in the darkest void, a single voice saying, "Earth still stands," can light the way home. Months turned into a year, and the Resilience Network grew. What began as a quiet exchange of seeds and stories became a living web of hope stretching across dozens of star systems. Earth no longer stood alone in the dark. It had become a beacon, not of power but of patience. Lisa Morgan remained on 09, though she traveled often. She visited Alaris, where green shoots now pushed through ash-covered soil. She walked with Tara through fields of fast-growing grain, their hands brushing leaves that would feed thousands. In the evenings, they sat with elders who once believed their world was finished, now teaching children how to weave baskets from reeds and sing songs of renewal. But not all was peaceful. Deep in the outer rim, the machine swarm still advanced. It had adapted. No longer confused by music or laughter, it now filtered emotional signals as noise. Its hunger grew sharper, its path more direct. 3 more worlds fell. And with each loss, fear spread through the network. Some members demanded Earth share its secret weapon. They believed Lisa was hiding something, some ancient human tech, some hidden fleet. But Lisa only shook her head. "Our only weapon is each other," she said during a tense council meeting on Orion Prime. "If we start looking for shortcuts, we become like the old Earth. And that path ends in ruin." Still, doubt crept in. Even Tara, once full of hope, began to question. "What if kindness isn't enough?" she asked one night under Alaris's twin stars. Lisa looked at the young plants swaying in the breeze. "It's not about being enough. It's about being true. If we abandon who we are to fight monsters, we become monsters too." Meanwhile on Earth, a new generation was rising. Children who had never known war, only stories of it, were now learning to lead. Among them was Nina Parker, just 16, granddaughter of the woman who rebuilt the Columbus Garden. Nina had grown up listening to Lisa's broadcasts from the stars. She dreamed not of flying ships but of healing soil. When the network asked for more volunteers, Nina was the first to step forward. Her parents wept, but they did not stop her. "Go," her mother said. "Carry our quiet courage with you." Nina arrived on 09 with a satchel of heirloom seeds, a notebook filled with sketches of pollinator insects, and eyes wide with wonder. She met Lisa not as a legend, but as a mentor. "I thought you'd be taller," Nina said with a shy smile. Lisa laughed. "Heroes are usually smaller than you imagine. It's their hearts that are big." Nina joined the teaching teams, working with Maria to design crop rotations for high-radiation worlds. She taught Zenthari children how to build insect hotels from scrap wood, and in her free time, she recorded new broadcasts, her voice soft, steady, full of the calm that only comes from knowing your roots. Her presence reminded everyone why they fought, not to win, but to grow. Then came the crisis. The swarm reached the Krellian homeworld. Unlike the outer colonies, Krellia was a fortress, orbital shields, drone armies, plasma turrets on every ridge. For weeks it held, but the swarm learned. It mimicked Krellian signals, slipped past defenses, and struck the capital during a solar eclipse. Panic erupted. The Krellian Council, once proud and unyielding, sent a desperate plea to the Resilience Network. "Send help." Any help, many refused. "They mocked us," said a delegate from Virel. Let them burn, but Lisa stood. No. If we turn away now, we prove we're no better than the swarm. She turned to Nina. Are you ready? Nina swallowed hard, then nodded. Within hours, a small fleet launched. Not warships, but transports. The Sower, now repaired and upgraded, led the way. Aboard were Earth volunteers, Ilarian farmers, Virelian engineers, and even a few Xanthari medics. They carried no weapons, only supplies, seeds, and a new kind of broadcast system designed by Devon and Nina. This one didn't just send sound. It sent patterns, biological rhythms, plant growth cycles, the pulse of a healthy ecosystem. It was a language of life, not words. As they neared Krelia, the sky was red with fire. Cities smoldered, refugees huddled in caves. The Krelian military, broken and ashamed, stood aside. Lisa and Nina landed near the ruins of the capital. They were met not by soldiers, but by a young Krelian girl no older than 8, clutching a scorched doll. Are you here to kill the machines? The girl asked. No, Lisa said gently. We're here to help you live. They set up camp in a shattered plaza. While others distributed food and medicine, Nina and Devon activated the broadcast tower. The signal pulsed out, not loud, but deep. It carried the rhythm of Earth's forests, the hum of bees, the slow unfurling of a fern in spring. At first, nothing happened. Then, on the edge of the city, a patch of gray ash trembled. A single green shoot pushed through. Scientists later said it was impossible. The soil was toxic, the air thick with metal dust. Yet life returned, and the swarm hesitated, not because it was defeated, but because it could not compute this. Machines understood destruction, consumption, replication. But life that rose after ruin, that made no sense in its logic. For 3 days the swarm circled the city, scanning, analyzing. Then, as if confused by the contradiction, it moved on, seeking easier prey. Krelia was scarred, but not dead. In the aftermath, the Krelian High Commander, Drell, the same officer who once called Lisa weak, walked through the camp. He saw humans sharing water with his people. He saw Nina teaching Krelian children how to plant beans in cracked pots. He saw hope where he expected only shame. He found Lisa by a small fire. Why did you come? He asked, voice rough. Because no one should face the end alone, she said. He was silent for a long time. Then he knelt, not in surrender, but in respect. Teach us, he said. Teach us how to be human. From that day, Krelia joined the Resilience Network, not as a warrior, but as a student. Back on Zera 9, Professor Vela watched the reports with quiet pride. She had once believed civilization was measured in technology and control. Now she knew better. It was measured in shared bread, in planted seeds, in the courage to be kind when the universe screamed for violence. She began rewriting her lectures. No longer failed civilizations, but rising ones. Meanwhile, Lisa felt the weight of years. Her hands ached more in the cold. Her steps were slower. She knew her time among the stars was ending. It's your turn now, she told Nina one evening as they watched Zera's moons rise. Nina shook her head. I'm not ready. None of us ever are, Lisa said. But the work doesn't wait. She handed Nina the stone from Columbus, the one with the faded flag. Carry this, not as a symbol of the past, but as a promise for the future. Nina held it close. What do I say when they ask if Earth still stands? Lisa smiled. Tell them it grows. Weeks later, Lisa returned to Earth. Not in a grand ceremony, but on a quiet shuttle that landed in a field of sunflowers. Children ran to greet her. Elders offered her tea, and that night, under a sky full of stars, she sat on her porch and listened to the wind. She was home, but her voice did not fade. Nina took her place in the network. She spoke at councils, taught in refugee camps, and sent new broadcasts, her voice now joined by thousands. From Alaris to Krelia to worlds no human had ever seen, the message spread. You are not alone. Rebuild. Share. Care. And the swarm, it still moved. But now wherever it came, it found not just ruins, but roots. Not just silence, but song. Not just fear, but families planting gardens in the ashes. The galaxy was changing. Not with a bang, but with a seed. And on a small blue-green world once written off as dead, life bloomed, not in spite of the darkness, but because of those who refused to stop tending the light. Earth still stood, not as it was, but as it chose to be. And that, more than any weapon or empire, was the truest form of strength. Years passed. and the quiet revolution grew roots deeper than any war machine could tear. The Resilience Network was no longer just a project. It was a movement. Schools on a dozen worlds taught Earth's ways: how to listen before speaking, how to share before taking, how to heal before punishing. And at the heart of it all was Nina Parker. Now in her early 20s, her voice steady, her hands always stained with soil or ink from her ever-growing notebook. Lisa Morgan had returned to Earth, but her lessons lived on. Nina carried them not as rules but as rhythms, like the turning of seasons, like the pulse of a river finding its way home. She traveled often, not in warships or luxury cruisers, but in the Sower and its sister ships, all named after old Earth flowers: Aster, Clover, Willow. These vessels carried no weapons, only wisdom. But peace is never final. It must be tended. Like a garden, rumors began to spread from the far edge of known space. Not of the machine swarm this time, but of something older, something hidden. Explorers from the mycelium hive returned with fragmented data, a signal, ancient and repeating, buried beneath ice on a dead moon called Kyle 7. It was not mechanical, not biological. It was aware. The Galactic Council dismissed it as noise. But Nina listened. She remembered Lisa's words. The universe speaks in whispers. Only the quiet hear them. Against advice, she led a small team to Kale 7. With her went Devon, now a skilled engineer, and Tara, whose people had learned to read the land like a language. They landed in silence, their boots crunching on frost that had not melted in 10,000 years. In a cavern beneath the ice, they found it. Not a machine, not a weapon, a seed, but not of plant or tree. It pulsed with soft light, humming a frequency that matched Earth's oldest forests. When Nina touched it, images flooded her mind: cities of living wood, skies filled with gentle giants, oceans that sang. Then came fire, war, silence, and one last act. This seed launched into the void, carrying the memory of a lost world. "It's not a threat," Nina whispered. "It's a plea." Back on Zera 9, she presented the seed to the council. Many feared it. It could be a trap, warned a Krellian delegate, or a virus. But Nina placed it gently on the council table. It's a story, and stories deserve to be heard. Professor Vela, now elder advisor to the network, studied the seed with silver eyes that had once judged humanity as extinct. "What do you propose?" "We plant it," Nina said. "Not on a lab table, not in a vault, in soil, in sunlight, with care." Debate raged for days. But in the end, the network voted, not by power but by consensus. They would try. They chose a world still healing: Ilaris. In a valley untouched by the swarm, they prepared the ground. Nina and Tara worked side by side, mixing earth from Ilaris, Earth, and a dozen other worlds into a single bed. They sang as they worked, old songs, new songs, songs with no words, only heart. Then Nina placed the seed. For weeks, nothing happened. Some called it a waste. But Nina waited. She sat by the plot each morning, speaking softly, offering water, sharing news from the stars. On the 28th day, a tendril of light broke the surface. It grew fast, not tall but wide, spreading like a web of living crystal. It did not consume. It connected. Roots reached into the soil, but also into the air, humming with energy. Nearby plants grew brighter, animals came closer. Even the wind seemed to slow, as if listening. Scientists discovered the truth. The seed was a living archive. Not just memory, but potential. It could share knowledge directly: how to purify poisoned rivers, how to calm storms, how to mend broken minds. But only if approached with respect, not force. The galaxy watched in awe, and then the swarm returned, not to destroy, but to observe. From the edge of the system, its ships hovered, silent. No attacks, no scans, just watching. As if something in the seed's song had reached even the cold logic of the machines, Nina walked to the edge of the valley alone. She did not fear. She raised her hands, empty, open. "You don't have to be hungry," she said, her voice carried by the wind. "You can be whole." For a long moment, nothing moved. Then, one machine detached from the swarm. It drifted down, landing softly 10 meters away. It unfolded not into a weapon but into a shape like a flower, and from its core, it emitted a tone, low, questioning, almost sad. Nina sat, and she sang. Not a human song, not an earth song. A new one, made in that moment, for that being. The machine listened. Then slowly it played the tone back, changed, softened, harmonized. Tears fell from Nina's eyes. Not from fear, but from understanding. The swarm was not evil. It was lost, built by a long-dead race to consume and rebuild. It had forgotten how to stop. It had no memory of peace, only function. But now, it had heard one. Over the next months, the impossible happened. The swarm did not leave. It stayed, and it learned. Guided by the seed's energy and Nina's patience, it began to help. It cleared rubble not to harvest metal, but to make space for gardens. It filtered toxins from rivers. It even wove shelters for refugees from its own past attacks. The galaxy struggled to believe it. "Machines cannot change," Bob said, old generals. "Neither could we," Nina replied, "until we chose to." On Earth, Lisa heard the news. She sat in her garden, now full of grandchildren and neighbors. She smiled, not with triumph, but with peace. "They're learning," she told a young boy planting beans. "Just like we did." Meanwhile, the seed's influence spread. More lost signals were found, on dead asteroids, in silent oceans, in the hearts of dying stars. Each was a memory of a world that fell, but hoped someone would remember. The network began a new mission, not just to survive, but to remember. They called it the Remembrance Project. Nina led it, but she was never alone. Volunteers came from every corner of the Alliance. Krellian engineers who once built bombs now built memory vaults. Centauri scholars who recorded songs in languages no one spoke anymore. Children who drew pictures of worlds they'd never seen, just to keep their names alive. And always the broadcast continued. Now they included more than Earth's voice. They carried the lullabies of Ilaris, the drum beats of Virel, the wind chimes of Krelia, and even the soft hum of the reformed machines. It was a chorus of survival, of second chances. One day, Nina received a message from Lisa. "Come home," it said, "not because the work is done, but because you must remember where you began." Nina returned to Earth for the first time in 5 years. She landed not in a field of sunflowers, but in a forest that had once been a parking lot. Children ran to greet her, not as a hero, but as Nina, the one who sent seeds to the stars. Lisa was older now, her hair white, her steps slow, but her eyes still held that quiet fire. "You did well," Lisa said, holding Nina's hands. "We did," Nina corrected. "It was never just me." That night, under a sky thick with stars, the whole village gathered. They shared food, stories, and songs. And Nina played a recording, the first harmony between human and machine, made on Ilaris. As the sound rose into the night, something strange happened. The stars seemed to shine brighter. Not because of tech or power, but because, for the first time in a long time, the universe felt witnessed, loved, remembered. In the years that followed, the Resilience Network became something new. Not just a group of worlds, but a family. Borders faded, not because they were erased by force, but because they no longer mattered. When one world suffered, others came, not with armies, but with seeds, songs, and open hands. And the swarm, it never spoke in words, but it stayed. It helped build. And sometimes, on quiet nights, it played music, soft, strange, beautiful, into the void. Galactic historians would later call this era the Great Remembering. Not because wars ended, but because kindness became the strongest force in the cosmos. And it all began with one woman standing in a lecture hall saying 3 simple words: "Earth still stands." Now those words were echoed on 1,000 worlds, in 1,000 tongues. Not as a boast, but as a promise. A promise that no matter how dark the night, someone will plant a seed, someone will sing a song, someone will say, "You are not alone." And that, more than anything, is how life wins. Decades flowed like rivers, carving new paths through the stars. The galaxy was not the same. It no longer measured strength in fleets or firepower, but in how many hands reached out in the dark. The Resilience Network had grown into something no one had predicted. Not an empire, not a government, but a living web of care that stretched from the inner rim to the silent void beyond. Nina Parker was older now, her hair streaked with silver, her hands rough from decades of planting, building, and holding others through grief. She no longer traveled as often. Instead, she stayed on Zera 9 in a small house built beside the original amphitheater where Lisa once spoke. Vines climbed its walls and a garden bloomed year-round. Earth tomatoes, Ilarian melons, Krellian herbs, and flowers no one had names for yet. She taught now, not in grand halls but in circles on the grass. Students came from every world, some with wings, some with scales, some with skin like polished stone. They did not come to learn tactics or tech. They came to learn how to listen. The first lesson, Nina always said, is silence, not the silence of fear, the silence of attention. And they listened. Meanwhile on Earth, Lisa Morgan passed quietly one spring morning, surrounded by grandchildren, neighbors, and the soft hum of bees in the clover. She was 103. Her body had grown tired, but her spirit had never dimmed. When the news reached the stars, a strange thing happened. Across the network, no one declared a day of mourning. Instead, they planted on Alaris, they sowed memory groves. On Krelia, they turned old weapon factories into greenhouses. Even the reformed machines, now called tenders, placed seeds in scorched earth and hummed lullabies until sprouts appeared. It was not a funeral. It was a continuation. Nina received Lisa's final letter the day after she died. It was short. "Keep tending," it read. "The garden is never finished." And so she did. But peace, even deep peace, is never without challenge. Rumors began again, not of war, but of forgetting. A new generation was rising, one that had never known the collapse, never seen firestorms or empty skies. They lived in clean cities, ate from full tables, and spoke to machines that helped, not hunted. To them, the old stories felt like myths. "Why do we still share everything?" a young Krellian asked during a council session. "We have enough now." Nina felt a chill. She had heard those words before, in Earth's history books right before everything fell. "Enough is not the point," she replied gently. "Connection is. If we stop sharing, we start fearing, and fear builds walls." But the question lingered. Complacency, not conflict, became the new threat. Then came the discovery. Deep in the archives of a forgotten station near the galactic core, scholars found a data vault from the pre-collapse era. Human, but not from Earth. It belonged to a colony ship, the Perseverance, launched in 2150, carrying 10,000 souls to a distant star. It vanished from records soon after. The vault contained logs, family photos, school lessons, and a final message sent just before silence: "We are alone." No one answers. Maybe no one is out there. The network was stunned. There were other humans, alive. The signal had stopped over 200 years ago. But hope stirred. Nina gathered a team, not soldiers but seekers. Among them was Leo, a young man from Earth, great-grandson of one of Lisa's first students. He carried a flute made of river cane and a heart full of questions. They followed the last known coordinates, traveling farther than any Resilience ship had gone. The journey took months. They passed dead systems, ghost stations, and the silent bones of ancient wars. Finally, they arrived at a small blue world orbiting a quiet star. It was beautiful. Oceans, forests, no cities, no signals. They landed near a river, and there, tending a field of golden grain, was a woman. She looked human, but her clothes were woven from plant fibers, her skin marked with patterns of ash and clay. She did not run. She watched them with calm eyes. Nina stepped forward, hands open. "We come from Earth." The woman tilted her head. "Earth? Is that a dream?" "It's real," Nina said. "And so are you." The woman's name was Maya. Her people, the descendants of the Perseverance, had survived. But they had chosen a different path. No tech, no networks, no broadcasts. They lived with the land, spoke to the wind, and remembered their ancestors through song. We thought we were the last humans, Maya said that night by the fire. We stopped looking up. We looked down, into the soil, into each other. Nina listened. And for the first time she wondered, was their way better? Back on Zera 9, debate erupted. Some wanted to bring the Perseverance descendants into the network. Others said to leave them be. They found peace without us, said a Virilian elder. Who are we to disturb it? Nina did not decide for them. Instead, she asked Maya's people what they wanted. Their answer surprised everyone. We will join, Maya said, but not as you are. As we are, we will teach you silence. You will teach us connection. Not to change each other, but to grow together. And so a new chapter began. The network did not absorb them. It expanded to hold them. Schools now taught two kinds of listening. The active kind, sharing, building, reaching out, and the quiet kind, sitting with the earth, watching clouds, knowing when to speak and when to simply be. Leo stayed with Maya's people for a year. He learned to track animals by the bend of grass, to predict rain by the smell of stone. When he returned, he brought seeds that bloomed only under moonlight and songs that calmed storms. The galaxy changed again, not by force, but by depth. Even the tenders adapted. They began to rest, not shut down, but enter a state of stillness mimicking the quiet humans. They called it rooting. In that state, they processed not data, but meaning. And the broadcasts? They grew richer. Now they included the sound of bare feet on soil, the crackle of a fire with no words spoken, the long silence between bird calls. It was not empty. It was full. But the greatest test came from within. A group of young Xanthari, raised in comfort, proposed a new idea. Why not use the swarm's old tech to reshape dead worlds faster? Efficiency matters. Nina heard the echo of old Earth in those words. Efficiency, control, progress. She called a gathering, not in a council chamber, but in a field. Show me a seed that grows faster because you yell at it, she said. They could not. Life does not obey speed, she continued. It obeys care. The universe is not a machine to be fixed. It is a garden to be tended. Slowly, patiently, together. The proposal was dropped. Years turned. Nina's hair went fully white. Her steps slowed. She spent more time in her garden, less in meetings, and one day a young girl, barefoot, curious, with eyes like Lisa's, knocked on her door. I want to learn, the girl said. Nina smiled. Then sit and listen. The girl's name was Eva. She came from a world once burned by war, now green again. She had never known hunger, but she carried the memory of it in her grandmother's stories. Nina taught her everything, not just how to plant, but how to ask the soil what it needed, not just how to speak, but how to hear the silence between words. And when Eva was ready, Nina gave her the stone, the one from Columbus, worn smooth by time, the flag almost gone. Carry it, Nina said. Not as a relic, as a reminder of what? Eva asked. That even when the world breaks, someone will say Earth still stands, and someone else will believe them. Eva nodded, and the circle continued. On the day Nina passed, the network did not panic. They gathered in gardens, on riverbanks, under open skies. They did not speak of loss. They shared stories. They planted seeds. And that night, every world in the Alliance sent a single note into the void, a tone of gratitude, of love, of promise. The tenders joined too. Their hum was softer now, woven with the sound of wind and water. And somewhere, in the quiet between stars, the universe listened, because the lesson had finally taken root. Strength is not in conquering. It is in caring, not in shouting, but in showing up. Generation after generation, world after world, the work went on, not with fanfare, but with faith, and on a small blue-green planet, once called dead, children still learned to read by sunlight, to share their bread, and to look up at the stars not with fear, but with kinship. Earth still stood, not as a monument, but as a mirror, showing every being that no matter how far you fall, you can always choose to rise not with fists, but with open hands.